We've got another murder mystery this week. But where the Hex last week had you donning your best deerstalker and trying to predict a murder, Return of the Obra Dinn has you playing crime scene detective and piecing together what happened after the fact. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First Five, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm going to tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today, we're piecing together the past in Return of the Obra Dinn. This is the Obra Dinn. She was built in 1796 and captained by Robert Witterell. She set sail from England to the Orient in 1802, carrying 60 souls, including a group of Formosan royalty. Except she never made it. The Obra Dinn was declared lost at sea, and that probably would have been the last of it. But years later, the ship has been relocated, drifting along the coast of Africa, minus her entire crew. As an insurance investigator for the East India Company, it's your job to investigate the ship and try to piece together its ill-fated journey. And in the process, you'll have to identify and divine the fates of all 60 of its crew and passengers as you reconstruct that journey piece by piece. That might sound like a tall order, but thankfully, you've got a supernatural pocket watch that lets you see each passenger's final moments. That usually covers the manner of death, but the harder blanks to fill in are who each person is. After all, you only catch a few seconds, and not a whole lot of the crew die with their murderer passionately screaming their name as they blast their head off. It's not like this is an anime or something. And on top of identifying the victim, you also have to fill in the blank of who, if anyone, killed them. Return of the Obra Dinn reveals all of these details with a very carefully placed breadcrumb trail. It starts at the very end of the story, showing the fates of the ship's last few survivors, then slowly leads you back through time as you descend through the ship. Honestly, your investigation is actually pretty linear, partly because each new area of the ship opens up one at a time, and partly because none of the crew dies alone, so watching one person's death will often reveal another body to study, which in turn reveals another. And viewing each crew member's death in succession begins to weave together a larger picture. One body may reveal a single event, but investigating multiple bodies in a row reveals a full scene that gives you a clearer picture of what's going on. For example, there was one body I found of a poor stabbing victim. And while that scene covered his final moments well after the stabbing, following the blood trail to a few other bodies revealed the initial struggle where he was stabbed, his killer was shot, and the man who shot him was clubbed to death. And you eventually find a link between this overarching scene and the previous one, as it starts with someone who was wounded in an entirely different scene succumbing to their injuries. Once you see all the little death vignettes, you actually have a pretty good idea of most of what happened. Which means from there, the primary motivation to press on becomes a logic puzzle of figuring out who's who by process of elimination. At this point, the game actually opens up a little bit. It essentially gives you the basics and a starting point to construct a fuller picture with several important members of the crew identified by that point, and then tells you to just figure the rest out. In that sense, the opening 3 hours seems almost like a tutorial, not just on the basic functions of your pocket watch and other tools, but also on the basic lines of deduction you can use to ferret out less obvious clues. And you also start picking up on a few random details along the way, like these guys that are all hanging out together are all top men, and these gamblers are the ship's trio of Russians, who you hear speaking in their native language in one vignette. And from those little clues, you start trying to trace each individual person's journey until process of elimination leads you to the answer. With the Russians, for example, one of them is a top man, while the other two are seamen. So naturally, you go to the vignette where all the top men are working up in the rigging. And lo and behold, there's one of the Russians. Now you've got a name attached to a face. There's still one last elephant here to talk about. The graphics. Yeah, they're, really out there. The monochrome aesthetic is a bit of an acquired taste. It's a good fit aesthetically for Obra Dinn's period piece narrative, given how we match sepia tones with old photos and thus the past, but the first time I saw a trailer for this game, it was hard to watch without hurting my eyes. For some reason, however, it didn't bother me at all when I was actually playing the game. I wish I could explain this phenomenon, but it's beyond me. It just kinda works. One mildly inconvenient side effect of the monochrome art style, however, is the way it erases details on faces and kinda makes many of its characters look the same. Luckily, Lucas Pope, the developer, seems to have predicted this issue, as there's a handy button that will automatically match any person you see with their corresponding photo, along with any information you filled in about them. That saves a lot of headache trying to figure out who's who as you jump from scene to scene. And the ability to match someone to their photo is just one of several little great quality of life features that can make or break this game and prevent it from turning into a frustrating mess. In general, Obra Dinn is just a very tightly crafted game. From that extremely careful breadcrumb trail I mentioned to a UI that's surprisingly less burdensome and unwieldy than it first appears, there's a lot of polish and forethought behind the existence of almost everything in this game. So with all of that covered, what do you get with 5 hours of Return of the Obra Dinn? Well, your mileage is probably going to vary, but I've currently seen almost every vignette aside from a few behind locked doors. And honestly, even if I haven't finished the game in its entirety, hunting down those last few crew members feels almost like extra side content after you finish the meat of the story. So I definitely think I got a complete, fulfilling experience out of Obra Dinn, even if there's still a few things left to do. And it's been a really intriguing journey to get there. Return of the Obra Dinn is definitely unique in the video game space. Its story is set during an underexplored time period, its visuals are part of a small wave of throwback monochrome Game Boy aesthetics, and it demands that you interact with its puzzles completely differently compared to almost anything else in the industry. Like, this game shouldn't feel as unique as it does. It's basically just an incredibly complicated game of Clue, but no other games are really doing anything like this. Or at least none that I've played. And they're definitely not doing it as well either, because Obra Dinn is an extremely tightly crafted game. Overall, this game is definitely worth the look. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this first 5 review. If you did, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're looking for games that value your time and don't pad themselves, I'm your guy. And be sure to check out some of my other reviews or longer form content while you're here. But regardless, thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.